Hey everyone, just wanted to jump in before the video starts to let you know we won't be a part of it.
Aw, we'll miss you too.
The reason we're taking a break is because Mac made it clear that this is a really important topic, and while he appreciates our contributions, the tone wasn't appropriate for this video.
We're very silly.
Borderline absurd. So let's give Mac our full attention. And I know, his humor can be a little dark and his demeanor uncompromising.
He's such a grumpy daddy.
Don't do that.
Oh, did I textually fantasize again?
Sexually infantilize.
What did I say?
This video's pretty important, so we'll leave you to it.
What?
We agreed I would do the wink so that it would be subtle. All right.
This is the esoteric preparation video. No purchase advice, no kidnapping the elderly humor. This is just me talking. There may be some oblique references to feelings here, and believe me, no one's more offended by that situation than I am. So let's get it done. I wish there were some words to truly prepare you for the impending torment of being wholly responsible for the survival of a completely helpless infant. There are none, but I'm a bit of an egotist, so I'm still going to try. First of all, you are going to overreact, and you will overreact to so many things. That's okay. If anything, it's good. These overreactions are your parenting skills getting dialed in. You are learning the limits of another human being who is incapable of telling you how they feel, where they feel it, and why. My son ended up in an emergency room during the COVID pandemic because he was experiencing excruciating pain that came in intermittent waves every few minutes. The pain was so bad, it was making him vomit. I could not have been more terrified. You know what it was? Gas and constipation. He had literally never had his intestines bind up before, so he didn't understand the experience. When he finally went to the bathroom while we were sitting in the waiting room, it all went away. And this is an issue you will face constantly as you raise your kid. They lack the frame of reference necessary to understand what is happening to them. Everything is scary and new and confusing. Since humans are empathetic creatures, we experience the fear and confusion our kids are going through, and it throws off our logic centers. We're not always able to suss out what's really happening because we love our kids and we never want them to be hurt or scared. I warned you there would be feelings. Unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot that can be done to minimize these experiences. Some of it just has to be suffered through so that our kids can learn what these things mean and how they apply to their personal limits. But there is one mitigating process that I believe can reduce the total number of overall incidents and accidents. It isn't the easiest thing to implement as it requires either an excess of life experience or a kind of actuarial mindset. But I believe it is possible to train yourself to think in a way that will allow you to see the swirls of potential fates that I'm describing. To be clear, everything I'm about to say is intended for single dads. Well, single parents in general, but clearly my experience is as a single father. You're going to need to develop what I call final outcome thinking. Not final destination thinking, that just assumes that everyone will die in the end, which I guess is accurate, but not really helpful. Now, what I'm talking about is assessing the potential outcomes of situations, with a special consideration for worst-case scenarios. I didn't say this was going to be a fun headspace to live in, but it doesn't have to be a constant state of being. But this is especially important when you're the only parent in the house, because there's no one else to pick up this slack. You need to be very aware that whenever you teach your kid something or engage in a new activity or observe your kid doing something new, final outcomes are paramount. What the hell does all this mean? Let me give you some examples. Let's say your kid is in a high chair and is done with their meal. You clean them up, and then you start to lift them out of the chair. They push the tray out of the way and try to stand up on their own. So awesome, right? Your little person is making connections. Your kid learned the sequence of events and wants to help out. You have the proud parent vibe going, and you reward them with praise. This is where final outcome thinking would throw a flag on the play. The problem that doesn't yet exist, but is potentially looming, is when your kid decides to get up from the high chair on their own. When they stand up in that thing, they are 3 feet off the ground with very little to hold on to. What if they do this while you're in the kitchen, refilling their drink? How quickly do you think you can cover that distance before they go head first into the ground? And believe me, kids go head first into everything. So when your kid tries to stand up on their own in the high chair, you really should make it clear that they aren't supposed to do that. By the time they're old enough for you to explain the difference between standing on their own or standing when a parent is present, your kid's high chair days would be long gone. Now, like I said, you don't have to think like this forever, but you do need to have this mindset while your children are old enough that they repeat actions that earn them praise, but are too young to understand the context of the situation or have consequences explained to them. To put that in the high chair example, if you praise your child for trying to stand in the high chair, they're not going to grasp the context that standing up in the high chair is only praiseworthy when the parent is there helping. They just know that they got a dopamine hit when they tried to stand while in the high chair. And I don't know if you tried to have a conversation with someone 18 months old, but it's pretty one-sided. Since they don't speak words, it's impossible to use those words to explain that falling from a high chair might kill them. They also don't have the capacity to imagine how their actions could endanger them. That's your job. Which is why you need to turn on your final outcome thinking. Are there other examples, you ask? Certainly. There should never, for any reason, be horseplay at the top of the steps or on the steps. It doesn't matter how cute they are in the moment or how safe they are with you there. They aren't connecting those contextual dots. They just remember all the fun that happens near the steps. For the same reasons, you should never teach little kids how to unbuckle their own harness or seatbelt until they are old enough to understand an explanation about when unbuckling is appropriate. So even if it's cute to watch them fumble with the latch or makes you proud that they comprehend the series of events, do not encourage it. Because you don't know what connections they're making. They may remember you praising their efforts to unbuckle and then try to do it in the middle of a drive. Because they want your attention. Or, more accurately, they want the happiness your attention gave them. Or even more accurately, they want the dopamine hit they got when you praised them. I'm not saying our kids are tiny happiness junkies. But our kids are tiny happiness junkies. We are hardwired to crave joy. For infants and toddlers, their parents are the primary source of any joy. We feed them, we change them, we hold them. We are ever present, witnessing nearly every moment. So you need to understand the power of your praise. Anytime you encourage your child, you make them happy. And since their entire life experience is the sum total of your interactions, they are going to repeat anything they did that earned them your praise. So before you clap your hands and give them a dopamine hit for doing something, think about the worst case scenario in which that action could take place. If they put all the wooden shapes in the right place in their puzzle, the worst case is probably that they will try to find that puzzle and perform that action when you're trying to teach them about a different puzzle. They get frustrated with the new thing, so they want to use the one they already know will earn them praise. This is a benign effort with almost zero issues. But if they're not happy in the back seat while you're in traffic and decide to recreate the happiness they remember when you praise them for unbuckling themselves, that's a problem. So be vigilant about considering final outcomes. And think hard about the behaviors you were encouraging when you praise your kid. This is a lot to parse at once, and skepticism on your part is warranted. I'm just the bearded single dad that does weird segues with absurd alter egos. But if you boil down what I'm saying, you can recognize the basic truth here. Don't encourage behavior that could lead to bad outcomes until your child is old enough to have the context or consequences explained to them. Now, this next part is going to get a reaction out of some people, but try to rein in your outrage and hear me out. All of this is not unlike training a dog. I know. Stay with me. If you have a puppy and every time someone knocks on your door, you do that where you amp the puppy up about the visitor. Who is that? Who's knocking? Is someone at the door? Who is it? Any dog trainer will tell you to cut that out. You are literally training your dog to freak out every time someone knocks. My neighbors have a dog that started to howl when the local fire siren went off. I could hear them through the walls, laughing and encouraging this tiny animal as it howled along. Now it's a 100-pound shepherd mix that barks uncontrollably at any noise near the front door and howls like a wounded timber wolf for 10 minutes whenever there's a local emergency. I know many of you are not enthusiastic about me comparing training a dog to raising a kid. And you're right, it is different. But in the early years, when behavior is based largely on stimulus response, the similarities are undeniable. I'm not saying put your kid in a shock collar, and really don't put your dog in one either. but recognize that your kid will repeat actions that you encourage, and you need to seriously consider that. Think about the worst situations where they will repeat an encouraged action, because they absolutely will do so. Serious danger or physical harm could easily be prevented by simply not praising something they're doing. It's a lot of power, and with it comes a lot of something. I want to say frustration, or maybe sleeplessness. You know what I mean.
I think Mac would want us to step in at this point and reiterate, he's not saying you have to live your life in fear of what may happen.
Because May will definitely happen almost every year, right after April. It's true.
You just need to be more vigilant about possible outcomes for the first few years. Once you can explain to your kids what they need to do, you can dial it down to like a 6, I guess.
Of course, keeping them safe in a dog cage isn't one of the worst ideas.
No, that is one of the worst possible ideas. What are you doing? We were supposed to redirect away from the dog training.
I didn't get that email.
Okay, Mac has a little more for you that I think is really good stuff.
Look, I'm not the final word on anything, and there is a lot of advice out there. You're going to need some of it, but you're going to need to filter a lot more of it through your own common sense. And listen to your doctors. On that topic, you really need to get your insurance lined up to make sure your kid has all the regular checkups and vaccinations. And if you recoiled at me mentioning vaccinations, we're probably not going to be fast friends. Diseases kill children. We've cured diseases. The days of sending our kid to go hang out with the neighbor who has measles are over. For the same reason, we don't use leeches to cure depression or crack people's skulls open to release demons. There are people dramatically smarter than all of us that have solved a lot of health problems. So unless you can draw up a schematic right now that explains precisely how the screen you're watching this video on is making the magic painting talk to you, check your ego, vaccinate your kid. And make sure you have medical coverage. If you can't afford it, many states have a program in place to provide health care for parents below a certain level of income. It's a bit of a slog, and the turnaround time for verification can be annoying, but it's important. Kids need a lot more health care than most adults, and you shouldn't have to stress or be anxious over it. That state-funded health care also provides for school lunches in many states, so if you do qualify, don't let your ego get in the way here. It's a service that is and should be provided, and if you can make use of it, do so. All right. That was a wild ride, from feelings to dog training to emergency medical considerations. Listen, you are going to screw up in every area when raising your kid. We all do it. That's why kids are so resilient. It's our job to prepare as best we can, learn from our mistakes, and then improve our ability to create a safe environment. We can all do better. Now let's prove it. I talk fast. Pausing, going back. Oh my God. Where did you get the word not? Wow, this is rougher than I thought. Well, it is new. Wow, this is rougher than I thought. Well, it is new. Come on, we can do this. Wow, this is rougher than I thought. Well, it is new. I lost the thread. Lost the thread. Lost that thread right there. Oh God, this is a really long rant. I'm repeating myself. I should have done a better edit. Stop.